Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Najir's Journal podcast. Now, this is the second part of the video that we did on God's original design for marriage. So we're just going to jump into it. As a recap for what this is, what I mean by God's original design, this is when God created Adam and Eve in the garden. This is what his original design for marriage was, all the way back in the Garden of Eden in Genesis. So jumping into it, starting at Matthew chapter 19, verse 4, the verse says, "And he answered," the H is capital here, this being Jesus, "and said to them, have you not read that he who made them at the beginning made them male and female?" So the world will try to tell you so many different things, that marriage could be between anyone, marriage could be with a man, woman, and woman. All this nonsense. God clearly states that marriage is between a male and a female. Why? In order for the world to go forward, there needs to be a male and a female that procreate. So that's one reason. But overall, I think it's just God's original design. Men have a certain role in the relationship, and women have a certain role in a relationship. They're when Eve was created, she was created to be a helper. That is not a diminishing role at all. And there are certain roles and attributes that women have that are better suited, that are specifically suited for women, that men are just different in. Just stuff. So men and women both have their roles. Marriage is meant for specifically men and women. Moving on to Matthew chapter 19, verse 6, it says, "So then they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore what God has joined together, let not man separate." So reading this first part, they are no longer two, but one flesh. So you had a separate life before being married, right? You can go. There's a verse that talks about how like everything is, even though some things are allowed, doesn't mean that everything is good. So before you were married, you might have, you had a little bit more of, you could just go do whatever you want, and you weren't accountable to a wife partner. You're still accountable to God, but you weren't accountable to a wife. So you guys had like very separate lives. But then when you're married, you guys are living together. You guys are holding each other accountable. Your wife was created as a helper, so she's supposed to help you in the purpose that God has called you to do. And if you guys are becoming one, then you guys are really supposed to be helping each other as well. So you guys, it's no longer just a separate life. You guys are together now. There is no just, and then right after, literally like, "Therefore what God has joined together, let not man separate." So it's not just, "Oh, you get me mad, I'm leaving." No, this is a life commitment. So it says, "Let not man separate." It doesn't say let man not separate for 10 years, 20 years. It says let not man separate. That's final. So basically till y'all are no longer on this earth no more. Let not man separate, period. So when we look at the purpose of marriage, there's two things that I have written down. Number one, becoming one flesh, as I just mentioned. We hear about this in Genesis chapter 2, verse 24 by God, as well as in Matthew chapter 19, verse 6 by Jesus while he was teaching on earth. Number two, we have to no longer be alone. So God literally says it's not good for man to be alone. And then after this, on the same page, he creates Eve. And then Adam is blessed with a helper in receiving Eve as his wife. But expounding on that, it's not good to be alone part. Adam was the first human. So like, as far as we know, there was literally no other human. But also, what was Adam doing? He was active in the work of the Lord, right? So again, like this is sacrifice plays into this, right? And where's your heart truly set on? What if he gave Adam Eve before Adam had a real relationship with God, and before God gave him the assignments to take care of the garden, to name the animals? Then he could have idolized Eve over God. So look in your own life. Where have you idolized the gift over the gift giver, right? So even though God said it is no longer good for man to be alone, Adam was active in the work of the Lord before he blessed him with someone else. So, okay, a benefit of marriage. Proverbs chapter 18, verse 22 says, "He who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord." So you're obtaining literal favor from the God of all creation. That is a big deal. Whether you want to acknowledge that or not, that is a big deal. Because what does favor mean? You could have favor in the workplace, and it doesn't even mean anything better. But God has favor for you. You're going to get that promotion because you favor. You're going to succeed in this area. Favor. It doesn't make sense. Favor. So now we want to look at the commands, right? So what we read about how they're no longer two but one flesh. It says, "Therefore what God has joined together, let not man separate." That is a literal command. That is not an option. You know what I'm saying? Now Jesus does talk about the grounds for divorce, which is basically sexual immorality within the marriage. Like if that were to happen, like if you had to divorce this person, what the grounds for that would have to be, and which was sexual immorality. They weren't being loyal, pretty much. Another command is Ephesians chapter 5, verse 25, which says, "Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for her. So what is love? Well, the word just tells us. Just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for her. Where else do we see this at? John 3:16. Probably the most popular verse that like most people know. For God so loved the world that he gave. So it's saying he loved first and then gave. We see the same thing here. He loved the church and gave himself for her. So from what I'm understanding, there's a heart posture thing, right? You're setting your affection, your care is on God, but now there has to be a physical response to it. There has to be sacrifice. Because if you love something, you're going to give what's necessary to provide for it. You're going to give whatever it needs, you're going to make that happen. So it seems like it's a heart posture thing and then an outward response. Just like literally, the requirement to be saved. It says to confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus. In order to confess something, you have to already believe it. So that's the same thing with what love is. You already feel it, but you also want to show it, right? It says Christ also loved the church and gave himself for her. So love is sacrificial. This is especially like when we were reading about how no longer like two separate people, you become one flesh. That involves sacrifice. Time that you used to have by yourself to just do whatever, now you have to sacrifice. You have to make accommodations for each other's needs and stuff. It's sacrificial, but it must be worth it. Whenever God created it, there's beauty in it, for sure.